So Sean, today's his last day. So he's doing like a quick little capstone presentation. It's gonna be about 15 minutes. He's gonna talk about the takeaways of the program, takeaways of the company itself, and the takeaways from each property. So we kind of put together this little presentation. He really went above and beyond. So just take it away.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for making it. I know traffic can be a little bit of a hassle. But anyway, so I want to start it out and talk about some of my goals that I talked to Jess about in Dallas. And I know it's a little bland, but I wanted to understand and learn the terminology of residential real estate a little bit more and just get real world experience in the business environment. And then going through this whole internship, I found myself growing in unexpected ways of things that I couldn't think of in the beginning of all this. And some of that is becoming very good with remembering names. And I remember the first time, my first day, we were in the lounge over there in the giant circle. I couldn't remember anybody's names, but now I could say I know everybody's name. So that's pretty cool. And then also going to every property, or at least from my perspective, I was a little uncomfortable at first going into these new properties and meeting all these new people and yeah, just learning. But now I'm comfortable with going in, meeting everybody, and being able to talk about myself, hear about everybody else's ideas, interests, likes, and just starting conversations and all that. So, and even now too, I'd be scared about giving a presentation. But now we're here.
But now we're all friends.
Exactly, we're all friends. All right. So to start, these are takeaways from each property, and this is estuary. So from estuary, this is the first 2 weeks I was here. So I shadowed leasing from here. And I found that prospect and resident interaction and property surveillance and maintenance was the biggest takeaway from my perspective. And in this case, it's more dealing with prospects and how, say, Nate and Shaq and all of them interact and start their leads and tours. And that all started in the morning when they all do property walks. And I think that really shows the residents and prospective move-ins about how the property management team respects not only the property, but the residents itself, making sure that they're the top priority and want everything to be picture perfect for them. Now we're going to move on to the Harper. And this is another leasing role, so shadowing Craig for most of the time, and that guy is amazing. He always has his little, his cheat sheet, his lines for every single one. So I always thought it was funny too, because he would always be in the lounge and we'd go past this fridge and microwave or heater to keep food hot. So his line was always, keep your hot foods hot, keep your cold beverages cold. It's perfect, works in every condition. So that was funny. But yeah, so I guess it's him understanding the property and knowing the property so well and being able to take out questions and asking the prospects questions so he could go on the tours and show them around. So for instance, he would ask about their commute. So if they'd say that they go in the city, he'd walk them through the mailroom, show them the transportation screen, and say you can download this app, it's perfect, works in every single way, check out the times and for departure and arrivals, and yeah.
That's cool.
So that's that. And now Cobalt, Walls, and Steelworks.
Oh,
It's a great photo.
Make a Bitmoji.
Yeah, I forgot to, I was going to bring in my welcome letter. I forgot the welcome letter. All right, so keep going. So this is where I spent time with Kenny and Dom, and we were doing customer experience. So I found this really interesting in that they have their own role for the customer experience side and how the marketing directors do all the leasing. I thought that was very beneficial because they could put all their time and energy into dealing with residents and the resident life cycle, about how it all starts. Their first interaction is with the move-ins and how they set everything up in their little folders with local restaurants and menus and healthcare and other entertainment. They also handwrite little welcome notes within they throw their Bitmojis on there, so that's pretty funny. Yeah. And they also do really well with the resident programs and resident events, and they really keep the community really social in an environment because they do movie Wednesdays, and they have on Modern Message, they do polls to see which movies and genres of movies that they want, or the residents want to see. So they really get a lot of resident interaction through Modern Message, and it's really beneficial. So. And this is Mountain View Crossing. This was probably one of my favorite weeks It was a short week. It was Monday through Wednesday, and then 4th of July came. But I spent time with Bill, Edgar, and Douglas, and they showed me around the service side. I got my hands a little dirty and learned how to plumb. I took off, as you can see here, cutting some bike chains, taking out some bikes. Yeah, so this is really beneficial, seeing how the service team manages and operates with different types of residents. And right here I have different examples of what, because I worked with Douglas during, or Edgar, I mean, actually doing service and make readies and service calls. So this was an interesting day because there were 3 different types of residents that I witnessed. One was an elderly resident. One was a very, what's the word?
Special?
Special, yeah. He was angry. This man was angry.
Those are special residents.
Yeah, special resident. And then we had a very understanding resident, and I thought the understanding resident should have been more of a special resident, really.
You're
But
right.
yeah. So it was really, really special to see how Edgar talked to these residents and tried to calm them down. The elderly resident didn't know how to work a dishwasher. It was like her 5th time calling maybe, saying that the dishwasher was broken, but she kept holding the start button instead of pressing it, so it wouldn't run. But Edgar was he really wanted to help show her and express how easy it is to start this, and that it's new technology, but it doesn't have to be new. Then one of the other patients, or one of the other residents, he had a mic. Patient, yeah. He had a microwave.
He's the angry one.
Yeah, special. But he had a microwave issue where he had to change the filter. And Edgar knew that you just had to take the filter out, wash it under a sink, and then put it back in, hold, restart for a number of seconds. But the resident thought he knew more than Edgar, and he was getting angry. But Edgar was very, very insightful and just told him, yeah, you just have to wash it out, hold this button. But the resident made us go, you can use a sink to clean the filter. We had to go all the way downstairs, like 3 floors, walk miles, because this property is huge, just to clean out this filter and put it back in and press enter. So, and the other one, this guy had a leaking sink for about 2 weeks. This was the 3rd time that Edgar had to go back and try and fix it. And he was like, yeah, just take your time, let me know when it's done. So,
That one should have been angry.
should have been angry, yeah, that was the should have been angry.
Those are unicorns.
All right, now we're on Chantry Square at Morris Crossing. Yeah. I'd like to say this is my favorite property because the commute was only 15 minutes. Right down the road. But this is actually where I got kind of a taste to figure out the budget, which was my project, but I'll get down that a little bit further. But Justin was very helpful in trying to determine ways to increase revenue or increase income without necessarily changing pricing. We kept coming up with creative ideas to keep the residents aware of these amenities that you offer. So, and it was also helpful to see finding different vendors to save in expenses. I know we had the elevator problem.
Elevator guy.
Yeah, new contracted elevators. So we saved a decent amount. It's a good thing. Yeah.
Cool.
Now to Mountain View Crossing.
Oh, wait.
Oh wait,
Wait.
I'm back. There we go.
More.
Is it going? There it
There
is.
it goes.
I love this. Best driver.
All right, that was my favorite part of this week. Yeah, but Hunter's Glen was really great to see because of how big the property was. It was almost 1,000 units. And they actually were starting renovation on one of the new buildings, or one of their buildings. So it was really cool to see that, and how Tanya worked with the construction manager, and how she kind of had her choice in some ways of colors and different tiling and all that. So that was really cool to see. But from because I was following the ACM here, and she was dealing with a lot of collections. So it was interesting to see how she would put herself and try and get the collections, because a lot of it, people were moving out early, like 2 or 3 days early, so she had to prorate the rent and make sure that she was collecting after the actual move out date. So it was interesting to see that. And then yeah, a lot of it had to do with the reports. My first day there, I was working, I can't remember his name right now. But But I was working with the leasing manager. He was working on the
Jimmy?
weekly
Jimmy.
reports. Yeah, Jimmy. Yeah, he was working on the weekly report, and it was a good foot in the door to see all these reports and kind of get a gist of everything. I learned about OMRs, variance reports, AMEs. So that was good.
All that fun stuff.
All that fun stuff, all that jazz. And then we get to cast iron walls. And Doug was, he had his mind set on golf. He told me the one important thing was golf. But add a backstory, it was to create vendor relationships. So he was talking about the associations that he goes to and then the golf outings that he has with vendors. And I saw more as a positive side. If you have a positive vendor relationship, then you increase the delivery speed, and then you'll also increase the quality of the good or service that they're providing. So I think that's very beneficial, especially in times of need of different goods and services, especially because they had a unit that was a barnyard that smelled horrible, and they had to tear up the entire floor, and they had a new resident moving in 6 days or so. So they really needed the flooring in quick, and they were able to get it with their vendor because of this positive vendor relationship. And then we have the Philadelphia office. And this I really saw more of a culture aspect, because I really saw that the culture of Greystar really stops from the top and trickles down to the bottom. If it wasn't for such a strong culture and all the pillars, then it wouldn't be so easy to not be overwhelmed. Because I know everybody is very easygoing and welcoming of me coming into these new places. And in the beginning of this whole internship process, going to all these different properties, I was a little scared of going unnoticed and kind of getting pushed off to the corner. But everywhere I went, everybody was super welcoming and showing me all around all the properties and really wanted me there. Not really like I thought it was going to be like a sore thumb getting on their nerves, but they're very, very welcoming, very ready to teach me what they do.
It's New
So that's-
Jersey.
Yeah. So that's it. Those are the takeaways. And now this is the special project. Was creating the 2020 income budget for estuary, and this was very daunting. You even Jess said to me too at first that it was scary and overwhelming. And it was very overwhelming until I actually got to Morristown, and Justin actually kind of helped walk me through it a little bit to find, because I didn't realize I saw NSF fees and lease cancellation fees. Like, why would you want this? You don't want this to be a positive thing. So those are kind of some things that I found that were out of your control that you can't really handle. So in terms of just budgeting for it the right way, year to year based off of actuals. And then the other part of the project was also trying to increase or generate income based off of unfavorable items. And this was kind of better because then Justin also helped figure out that there are other ways to increase income without necessarily increasing price of different fees, but putting awareness out there, creating flyers to generate that awareness and have more resident pay for these fees.
All of the fees.
So these were some of the proposals that I had for club and rental fees, create awareness with flyers, and then decrease per hour rate. Pet fees and rent was create events to maximize revenue. Damages, ensure completion of documentation.
My favorite.
Yeah,
I will try to get it.
Garage income, increased fee on renewals. Some of these also have to do with having some garage audits and pet fee or pet audits too. Storage rent, increased storage rent per unit type, and also trying to create new storage depending on demand. Vending income, create awareness of the space availability. And in building 3, there is a dog wash station. Or building 3. There's a dog wash station that not too many people know about. So this is one of the flyers that I made to generate awareness.
Look at that dirty
Alright, and now it comes to the end. So, what did I like most about the program? I liked the fact that I was able to travel to all these different properties and see the different property types and how the different roles react to different circumstances at these different properties. And it was interesting to meet everybody and get a nice connection. To really gain that experience, it goes back to the boring goal that I set all the way in the beginning in Dallas. What did I like most about Gray Star? I have to say the lunches that everybody bought. But coming off of that, the people that bought it for me. Everybody was super nice and caring, and it really made it very easy to set in this new environment. Remember my first day, very scared, called Jess at 8:45 in the morning, had no idea where to go.
No.
Everybody was just super, super nice, super caring. One major takeaway from the Gray Star Management Division is that it's not just an apartment building, it's a community that's really set forth by the managers and everybody above the managers and below the managers, trying to create this community with the resident events, property walks, move-in checklists and sheets and gifts for the move-ins. And it really makes it easy for residents to have a good time and make friends. And one of the first questions that I was asked on my interview by Barrett was, what do you think a community is? And at first I'd said, I think it's like a neighborhood with neighbors coming out, being friendly and playing on all these sorts of games. And I think that's what everybody managing these properties does with all these resident events and tries to get everybody together and create just a social bubble and social environment. So I'd like to open the floor for any questions.
I like your takeaway. I think that one of the most impactful phrases that I've heard recently was, we residents don't live in our office, we work in their home, and I think that what you have been talking about this whole time really helps to illustrate what that means on a day-to-day life basis. That's what we try to do. We try to make sure that residents feel like we understand that we're working in their safe space. So, yeah.
I'm glad, right, personally, that the culture part that you get, right, because we deal in a service environment, right? So they say like, man, most of the time people are coming to us because they're upset, right? But we need to be happy, right? And we need to portray that, right? And we need to create a team that doesn't have infighting, right? Like, we have enough issues, right? Don't let our culture be one of them. So I'm glad that came out, because I know we put a lot of time, and it's hard to do, right? Like, to create this being that grows, right? It's like a tree, right? You gotta like keep nurturing it and watering it. So I'm happy that it came out.
Yeah, and it's different to see, interesting from my perspective too, because being at school, I've had to find apartments and places to live where I've had to deal with different management companies, and they're god awful. They're so bad, they're horrible. And that's where it's great too, because I know Gray Stars, they're initiating the student housing.
Sure.
And I think that the culture will really set forth, because we're like college students are people too.
Right.
And it's stressful for us because we're dealing with tests and finals and all that right in the middle of trying to find a place to live the following year. So definitely the help with the Gray Star Student Housing Division, it would be very beneficial.
It's important for on-site teams to control what they can control, right?
Yeah.
We can control our level of service, right? We can't control if your hot water heater explodes, but we control our recovery and the way we treat you.
Exactly.
And that's easy.
Yeah. So I want to say thank you again for having me. This was a great summer, and I'm very sad I have to go back.
When do you leave?
Like next week sometime.
All right.
Yeah.
Enjoy the time off.
And, yeah, I'm gonna play some golf. So
Apparently, you just go to Doug's.
create some vendor relations.